Imagine, for just a second, that a doctor hands you a sealed envelope.
Right.
And inside this envelope is a piece of paper stating unequivocally that your child is in immediate lethal medical danger.
A literal death warning.
Exactly. So you read the letter, you absorb the terrifying facts, right? You actually agree with the diagnosis. Your whole attitude completely shifts.
Yeah, you recognize the threat.
But then, and here's the crazy part,
Yeah.
you calmly fold the paper, you throw it in the trash, and you go back to cooking the exact same dinner you make every single night. You do absolutely nothing.
I mean, when you frame it like that, it sounds almost sociopathic, you know?
It really does.
Because you'd think any parent would, like, move mountains or bankrupt themselves or entirely upend their lives the moment their kid's health was threatened.
Right. It defies every single assumption we have about parental instinct.
Yeah.
But today, we're diving into a massive, meticulously documented behavioral puzzle that proves, well, it proves this isn't some rare anomaly.
No, not at all.
It's actually a fundamental feature of the human operating system. So welcome to the deep dive.
Yeah, glad to be here.
Today, you, the listener, are about to explore why giving people the undeniable objective truth is almost never enough to actually change their behavior.
And we're anchoring this whole deep dive in a brilliant, really subversive piece of research. It's a working paper from the NBER by Silvia, Prina, and Heather Royer.
Now, for those who might not follow the academic economics world, NBER stands for the National Bureau of Economic Research.
Right. It's basically the gold standard.
Yeah, the clearinghouse for economic research in the U.S.
Mm.
When Nobel laureates have some earth-shattering new finding, this is typically where those working papers show up first.
Yeah.
The data is highly scrutinized.
Absolutely. And Prina and Royer, so they are from Case Western and UC Santa Barbara, they decided to step completely out of the sterile lab environment.
Thank goodness for that.
I know, right? They went into the messy, unpredictable real world of Puebla, Mexico, and they wanted to test the absolute limits of human cognition and, well, denial.
And their tool of choice wasn't some multi-million-dollar health tracking app. It wasn't a sprawling government propaganda campaign either.
Nope. It was just a simple piece of paper.
Like a literal body weight report card for elementary school kids. A tool that costs pennies.
Literally pennies. But before we get into the envelopes and the experiment itself, we have to look at the landscape. We have to talk about what I call the silent crisis.
Right. Because there's this pervasive myth, a really stubborn one, actually, that obesity is purely a disease of affluence.
Yeah, like it's a luxury problem of the Western world.
Exactly. Driven by drive thrusts and ultra-processed grocery aisles. You know, the assumption is if you go to a developing nation, the main concern is still just starvation or undernutrition.
And that assumption is just completely wrong. I mean, totally false. While developed nations definitely get all the headlines, the truly terrifying trajectory like a biological wildfire is happening in the developing world.
The rate of growth is staggering. Let's put some numbers to that wildfire for Mexico, since that's our backdrop here.
Yeah, so if you look at the data between 1999 and 2006,
which is just a 7-year window, by the way.
Right, a blink of an eye in demographic terms. The obesity rate among Mexican boys shot up from 5.3% to 10.8%. It more than doubled.
Wow.
And for girls in that same tiny window, it jumped from 5.9% to 9%.
7 years. I mean, you don't double a national health statistic in 7 years without a massive systemic shock to the biological reality of a country.
It's an exponential curve. It's basically what happens when rapid urbanization collides with an influx of cheap calories and the culture just isn't prepared for it.
But here is the core conflict, the hook that makes this study so mind-blowing. Millions of parents are standing right in the middle of this smoke, and they were completely blind to the flames.
Totally blind.
And, you know, we have to pause here and look at the psychology of the listener, too, because it's really easy to sit back and judge these parents.
Oh, for sure.
But human beings have this terrifying evolutionary ability to just normalize our immediate environment. When a crisis develops slowly enough, day by day, fraction of a pound at a time, your baseline of what is normal just fundamentally shifts.
Yeah, we actually call it shifting baseline syndrome. It was originally an ecological concept. Like, scientists accept whatever the ocean looked like at the start of their career as the normal baseline, totally ignoring historical depletion.
Right. If you never saw the ocean full of whales, an ocean with 3 whales looks perfectly healthy to you.
Exactly. And that same blindness applies to our perception of human health.
Which raises a really uncomfortable question for you listening right now. What obvious, undeniable crises in your own life or your own household are you subconsciously ignoring just because they happen slowly?
Like a leak in your living room roof and you just pretend the carpet is naturally wet.
Yes. What red arrows are pointing aggressively upward while you look the other way?
Well, to figure out how to break through that exact kind of blindness, Prina and Royer targeted an area where the data was already just spinning out of control. Puebla, Mexico.
So they walk into a city where the shadow over the schoolyards is undeniable. In these specific public schools, nearly 30% of the kids were either overweight or obese.
Almost 1 in 3 children. And we need to strip away any cultural debates about body aesthetics here.
Right, this isn't about looks.
No, the researchers are focusing strictly on physiological reality. This is a severe medical threshold.
We are talking about physiological mutations happening in real time in elementary schoolers.
We're looking at dramatically elevated risks of pediatric hypertension. We're looking at type 2 diabetes, which used to be so rare in kids they literally called it adult-onset diabetes.
And now it's developing in grade schoolers, plus all the psychological trauma, right? Discrimination, depression.
Exactly, in kids as young as 8.
Let's just put that 30% figure into perspective for a second. If 30% of the kids in a public school suddenly broke out in a mysterious, spreading rash, what would happen?
The school would be locked down by noon.
Right. The military or the CDC would be called in. You'd have hazmat suits on the playground. It would be on every news channel.
The panic would be absolute.
But because the symptom of this particular crisis is weight gain, there is a deafening societal silence. It barely makes a ripple in family conversations.
And that silence is exactly what the researchers uncovered in their baseline surveys. Which brings us to what might be the most chilling data point in the entire paper.
Oh, this part is wild.
I want you to remember 2 massive percentages, 67% and 94%.
These numbers define the cognitive blind spot.
So the researchers asked a very simple multiple-choice question to the parents before the experiment started. They didn't ask for exact weights or BMI math.
Keep it simple, yeah.
They just asked the parents to classify their own child into one of 4 categories: underweight, normal weight, overweight, or obese.
A basic reality check. Do you know what you're looking at when you looked at your own kid?
Right. So when it came to parents who had mathematically overweight children, 67% of them got it wrong.
2/3 of them.
2/3 confidently classified their kids as a normal, healthy weight.
They're looking right at a brewing medical problem and seeing perfect health. But the next demographic is the one that really slaps you in the face.
Yeah, for the parents whose kids were in the highest risk category, clinically, medically obese, a staggering 94% of them underestimated their child's weight.
94%. Let's just sit with that for a second. That is not a slight miscalculation.
No, it's not.
That's not missing the mark by a couple of pounds because your kid is wearing a baggy sweater. That is a near 100% rate of cognitive blindness among the people who are in the most danger.
It absolutely demands an explanation.
How is it neurologically possible? These are the people dressing these children every morning, bathing them, feeding them multiple times a day. Is the brain actively deceiving them?
It is almost certainly a complex defense mechanism. It's rooted in cognitive dissonance.
Ah, cognitive dissonance. The extreme mental discomfort you feel when your beliefs contradict your reality.
Exactly. So the core belief here is, I am a good, loving parent who protects my child.
Right.
And the physical reality of, my child is morbidly obese and might die young because of the food I'm giving them, that completely shatters their identity.
The guilt would be crushing. It would be intolerable.
So the brain just protects the ego. It alters their perception of reality. The parent rationalizes, oh, he's just big bone, or she's just hitting a growth spurt. It's just baby fat.
The mind literally chooses not to see the physical reality, rather than feel that overwhelming terror. That is a terrifying feature of human psychology.
It is. And into this exact psychological minefield step Prina and Royer. They set up their proving ground in Puebla between January and May of 2010.
And the methodology they used here is just a masterclass.
It really is. They tracked 2,746 students across 7 different public schools, ages 8 to 12 mostly.
Now, when you run an experiment in a tight-knit community like a public school, you run into a huge problem. Economists call it information pollution, right?
Yeah, spillover effects. Basically, if you treat School A as the intervention group and School B as the control group, What happens when the parents from school A talk to the parents from school B at the grocery store?
The secret gets out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Mrs. Garcia tells Mrs. Lopez about this terrifying weight report card, and suddenly, Mrs. Lopez, who is in the control group, starts changing her behavior.
Now, the control group is totally contaminated. The data becomes useless.
So to stop parents from gossiping and ruining the science, the researchers did something brilliant. They randomized the intervention at the individual level.
Not the school level.
Yeah.
Not even the classroom level.
Right. Within the exact same classroom, sitting at the exact same desk cluster, Kid A might get a report card, and Kid B gets absolutely nothing.
And they delivered this in sealed envelopes addressed directly to the parents in the kid's backpack.
It was an inescapable truth delivery mechanism. No teachers lecturing parents in public, no neighbors to compare notes with, just a quiet room, a torn envelope, and the cold, hard medical truth.
But they didn't just want to know if information worked. They wanted to test the limits. They wanted to know exactly what kind of information breaks through that 94% wall of denial.
Do you need a gentle nudge, or do you need a sledgehammer?
Exactly. So they split these families into 4 distinct groups, basically 4 different behavioral fates. Walk us through these.
Okay, group 1 was the control group. They got no weight or BMI information at all, just a polite invite to a free health class. That's the baseline.
Okay, baseline. Left in the dark. Group 2.
Group 2 was the basic info group. Inside their envelope, they got the child's height, weight, and a clear BMI categorization. Underweight, normal, overweight, or obese.
Just the clinical facts. Now, group 3 is where it gets aggressive.
Yeah, group 3 was the risk group. This was designed around loss aversion and fear appeals. They got the basic info, but if the kid was overweight or obese, the letter included a brutal medical warning.
How brutal.
It stated in plain language that the child was at significantly higher risk for diabetes, and this is key at risk for a shorter lifespan.
They put a literal death warning in a sealed envelope for an 8-year-old. You can't be more direct.
And then group 4 was the compare group. This tested peer effects and social norming.
Ah, the social pressure group.
Right. They got the basic info plus a visual chart showing exactly how their child compared to their specific classmates. It mapped out the weight distribution of that exact room.
So you could look at it and say, wow, my kid is heavier than 80% of the kids he sits next to.
Exactly. Now, behavioral economics says adding lethal risk warnings or peer comparisons should massively multiply the reaction, right?
Yeah, if you get the death warning envelope, you'd think it would light a fire under you. If you're listening right now, which envelope would make you panic? Which one makes you clean out your pantry that very night?
You'd assume the threat of a shortened lifespan would trigger a desperate response. But before we reveal what actually happened, we have to look at what these parents were worried about before the envelopes arrived.
Oh, man. This part of the baseline data is so baffling. It reveals this bizarre, almost broken hierarchy of human attention.
So they asked parents to rate their anxiety levels about different threats to their kids. Scale of 1 to 4, 4 being maximum worry.
And what topped the list?
By a massive margin, the #1 anxiety was school performance. Grades, test scores. It averaged a 3.71 out of 4.
Okay, I get that. Education's the ticket to a better life. What was next?
The H1N1 flu virus, which was in the news at the time, that scored a 3.27.
Viral panic, invisible, contagious. Evolution wires us to fear plagues.
And dead last on the list, far below grades and the flu, their own child's life-threatening weight, scored a mere 3.16.
And the truly face-slapping part here is that even among the parents whose kids were actively morbidly obese, their concern was practically identical to the parents of healthy kids.
Complete cognitive dissonance.
A parent will lose sleep, they will agonize over a C- on a math test, but they won't spend 60 seconds worrying about a chronic metabolic disease developing under their own roof.
It perfectly highlights our flawed threat detection. We are hyper-vigilant towards sudden threats like viruses, and we track easily measurable social metrics like grades because social standing was vital for survival historically.
But slow-moving internal threats, fraction of an ounce at a time.
We are functionally blind to them. They just become background noise.
It's like obsessively checking your car's rear-view mirrors to make sure no one scratches your bumper, while entirely ignoring the fact that the check engine light is flashing and the engine block is literally on fire.
That is a perfect analogy. You manage the visible social risk while ignoring the fatal structural risk.
And speaking of assumptions that this data just destroys, we have to look at who exactly was getting fat in Puebla. Because if you approach this with a Western mindset, you get the demographics completely wrong.
Oh, The geographic bias here is immense. In the US and Western Europe, we have this very ingrained narrative about wealth, education, and weight.
Right. The assumption is poverty equals obesity. Food deserts, cheap processed calories, lack of time for exercise.
But when you look at Table 4 in this study, the regression analysis of the Puebla demographics, the data completely flips on its head.
Let's explain regression analysis real quick for the listener. It's just a statistical tool that isolates variables like income or education to see which ones actually move the needle on the child's weight.
Exactly. It separates signal from noise. And the signal in Mexico was deafening. The data showed a highly significant positive correlation between a caretaker's education and wealth and their child's obesity.
Wait, I want to make sure the listener hears this clearly. Having more money and a higher education actually made you more likely to have an obese child.
That is exactly what the data shows. In fact, if a parent had not completed high school, the lowest tier of education, the coefficient for child obesity, was actually negative. Negative 0.054.
That is a complete inversion of everything we are taught in the West. It totally shatters the lack of resources argument.
You can't say they're feeding their kids junk because they're too poor to buy vegetables. The richest, most educated people are producing the heaviest kids.
And while we're just destroying classical economic myths, let's address the most offensive one, the concept of time preference, or present bias.
Economists love to blame obesity on a moral or disciplinary failure. The idea is that people heavily value the immediate joy of a donut and discount the future cost of diabetes.
It's the adult version of the Stanford marshmallow test, right? One marshmallow now or two later.
Precisely. So to test if a lack of patience was the root cause here, the researchers played a cross-temporal choice game with the parents. They said, we can give you 500 pesos right now, or if you wait 1 month, we'll give you 625 pesos.
A massive guaranteed return for just waiting 30 days.
Right, and it perfectly categorizes them. The ones who took the 500 pesos immediately have high present bias, instant gratification. The ones who waited demonstrated self-control.
So they take this behavioral data, they cross-reference it with the kid's BMI. The assumption being the impatient parents are the ones with the obese kids. What did the math show?
It showed absolutely zero statistical correlation. None. A parent's level of present bias had zero predictive power over their child's weight.
The greedy for immediate pleasure narrative is dead. So if it isn't lack of discipline, it isn't poverty, it isn't lack of education, what is actually feeding this crisis?
To find out, we have to look at what happened when those sealed envelopes were finally opened in living rooms across Puebla.
The Great Awakening. The moment the illusion shatters. We know 94% of these parents were blind before the experiment. Did the piece of paper actually penetrate that shield?
On a purely cognitive level, the intervention was a massive success. The correct classification of overweight kids jumped from the baseline of 33% up to 59%.
A huge leap in reality recognition.
And for the highest risk category, the parents of obese kids who were 94% blind, their correct classification spiked from 6% up to 20%.
Okay, so the report card successfully pierced the veil. The objective medical truth entered the conscious brain.
It did. They looked at the diagnosis, they looked at their kid, and the connection was made.
It's like waking up from the Matrix. You finally see the code.
And this cognitive awakening was followed by a dramatic attitude reversal. They mapped this out in figure 2 of the data.
Because knowing a fact is one thing, but caring about it is another. Did they care?
They cared deeply. In the clinically obese group, the percentage of parents who finally admitted their child weighed much too much skyrocketed. In the control group, it stayed flat at 6%. But in the treatment group, it shot up to 28%.
That's a 22 percentage point leap overnight. From my kid is fine to we have a serious problem.
The report card completely rewired their attitude. They felt that the risk was acknowledged.
The stage is set for a triumphant health revolution. They have awareness, they have the diagnosis, they have the concern. Public health textbooks say action is the inevitable next step.
Which brings us to the most terrifying, baffling discovery of the entire experiment.
Brace yourselves for this.
Yeah.
What did the researchers find when they followed up a month or two later to measure actual actions taken?
So they ran regressions to measure 7 different physical actions a parent might take. Did you discuss the weight issue? Did you see a doctor? Put the child on a diet? Restrict food? Increase exercise?
7 distinct lifelines. What were the coefficients?
The coefficient for discussing the weight: statistically 0. Seeing a doctor: 0. Dieting: 0. Increasing exercise: 0.
Wait, Nothing.
Nothing. Across the board, not statistically significant from the control group. The lines on the graph are completely flat.
How is that neurologically possible? How do you look at a peeper that screams, your child is in danger, agree with it, change your attitude, and then go back to making the exact same dinner?
Because we are witnessing a profound behavioral paralysis. When humans face an overwhelming high anxiety diagnosis, but the path to fixing it is socially fraught and requires immense daily friction, the brain defaults to the freeze response.
Like a deer in the headlights. The threat is so big, the organism just plays dead.
Exactly. They saw the crisis, they changed their minds, and then they chose to be completely coldly paralyzed.
But wait, we can't even say they froze because they didn't know how to fix it or because it was too expensive. The researchers literally handed them a free lifeline.
Yes. Right inside the envelope, next to the terrifying report card, was an invitation to a completely free, expertly run nutrition lecture at the school.
They removed every excuse. Don't have money, it's free. Don't have time to drive, it's at the school. Free salvation.
And the attendance rate for this free lifeline?
Let me guess.
Barely 20.4%.
That genuinely makes my stomach drop.
Almost 80% of parents whose kids were just diagnosed with a life-altering health risk threw the invitation in the trash.
It's not about resources. It's about a deep, dark psychological resistance. What are they running away from?
They are running away from the social and emotional friction of reality. Attending that class means walking into a room, sitting down, and publicly acknowledging, I have failed my child's health. The psychological toll of that is heavier than the abstract future threat of diabetes.
The ego protection wins over biological preservation. And the ultimate consequence is captured months later when they bring the scales back.
You cannot lie to a scale. 4 to 5 months later, they weighed all 2,746 kids again. The BMI trajectories of the kids who got the terrifying report cards were identical to the control group.
A physiological flatline.
As a policy tool for actual weight loss, the pure information report card was a total statistical failure, zero biological impact.
Was the policy just garbage? Or is there an invisible force field protecting the status quo?
To find the force field, we look at the compare treatment group, the ones who got the chart showing how their kids stacked up against the classroom.
Ah, the peer comparison. This is where the true villain is unmasked. It's not ignorance, it's social norms.
When everyone around you is sick, sickness becomes the new definition of health.
Walk us through this mechanism.
Think about the psychological calculation. You open the envelope, the doctor says your child is clinically obese, you panic, but then you look at the visual chart, or you just look around the playground.
And what do you see?
You see 15 other kids in that exact classroom who are exactly the same size.
And in that second, the medical truth is overwritten by the social truth.
The parent rationalizes, well, the doctor says it's a crisis, but literally every kid on the block looks like this. My kid fits right in, the chart must be broken.
It's like standing in a room where everyone is screaming. Even if a fire alarm goes off, you assume it's just part of the noise.
And Prina and Royer mathematically proved this. Table 8 in the study is the smoking gun. They ran a heterogeneous treatment effects regression to see if the local classroom environment altered the impact of the letter.
I want to paint this picture for the listener because this Table 8 data is literally a math proof for how peer pressure destroys facts.
So if a classroom had an obesity rate below 25%, the report card worked perfectly. It jolted the parent awake. The parent realizes, my kid is an outlier. The medical truth matches the social visual.
But what happens when the room is heavier?
If the classroom's obesity rate crosses a 36% threshold,
So more than a third of the kids are obese.
the treatment effect completely flips. The coefficient goes negative. Negative 0.401, highly significant.
Wait, a negative coefficient. The medical alert actually backfired.
Yes, the alert is entirely neutralized. The mass sinking of the group makes the medical diagnosis look like a meaningless scrap of paper. If everybody fails the test must be broken. Truth is literally canceled by the crowd.
That is profoundly unsettling. Truth is canceled by the crowd.
Which means we've systematically eliminated every comforting lie we tell ourselves about human behavior.
Let's review the wreckage here. Why didn't they act? It wasn't lack of funds. Free classes failed. It wasn't ignorance. They learned the facts. It wasn't lack of education. Richer, more educated parents had heavier kids.
And it wasn't a lack of self-control.
Humans are fully capable of knowing exactly why they are in danger, possessing the tools to escape, and still choosing absolute behavioral paralysis.
Because the social norm acts as an emotional anesthetic.
So why did this fail in Mexico? when similar report cards actually worked in places like Cambridge, Massachusetts.
Cultural soil. You cannot copy-paste human psychology across borders. In Western developed nations, the societal ideal is thinness. So a report card saying overweight activates deep social anxiety to conform to the thin ideal.
But the cultural history in developing nations is totally different.
In societies with a recent history of famine or undernutrition, the markers of wealth and health are inverted. It's caloric prestige. A plump child is a symbol of wealth, intense care, and abundance.
You can't use a Western behavioral Band-Aid on a totally different cultural wound. The context devours the intervention.
And that brings us to the ultimate synthesis. This is about the twilight of pure information as a policy tool.
The most expensive mistake in modern management.
The assumption is just tell people the truth, give them the data, and they will rationally change. This study proves that is a fallacy. Pure information doesn't create action.
What does it create?
Unmanageable anxiety. And when humans feel unmanageable anxiety without an easy escape route, they freeze. They avoid it.
The era of raising awareness needs to die. Raising awareness just paralyzes people.
To change behavior, you must pair the terrifying diagnosis with a ridiculously simple, zero-friction action step.
Like, don't ask them to overhaul their whole cultural relationship with food and attend a 2-hour lecture.
Right. You bypass the cognitive overload. You say, your child is at risk. Tonight, just serve their exact same dinner on a plate that is 2 inches smaller.
Heavy on the diagnosis, absurdly light on the execution.
Exactly. Heavy diagnosis plus heavy execution equals total failure.
As we wrap up this deep dive, we have to look at the broader historical cycle. As obesity climbs globally, the baseline of what is healthy shifts higher and higher.
And once the abnormal becomes normal, society loses the consensus required to fix it.
Which leaves me with a chilling parallel for you, the listener. Think about the massive, slow-moving crises of our time. Global climate change, exploding national debt, the rise of AI.
Are we living out the exact same paradox as the Mexican BMI experiment?
We get the terrifying data reports every day. We acknowledge the risk. Our attitudes change. And then, because everyone else is doing nothing, we normalize the crisis and remain fatally paralyzed.
We read the death warning and go back to cooking the exact same dinner.
What report cards in your own life are you currently ignoring simply because everyone else is doing the same? Keep digging.